boys' finale left everyone feeling empty and disappointed because after 5 seasons of brutal buildup, Eric Kripke rushed the resolutions, pulled back the emotional payoffs, and exposed his own hypocrisy while preaching about moral integrity. Let's get into it. At its core, The Boys was never just another superhero deconstruction. It was a sharp examination of institutions and how corporations shape culture, truth, and even identity. Kripke expanded the original comic's premise into something more ambitious. Vought wasn't merely a company, it was a media empire, a defense contractor, a pharmaceutical giant, and a political machine all rolled into one. Heroes weren't people. They were products, marketed, rebranded, and discarded when they stopped being useful. Homelander wasn't simply a Trump allegory. He was the ultimate corporate creation, a lab-grown child engineered for power and image, raised without love or humanity. That corporate origin story was what made him compelling, not the politics. The real heart of the series was never the politics, it was family, or more accurately, the devastating absence of it. Homelander's entire arc was a tragedy about a broken child desperately seeking love and approval. Season 1 gives him Madeline Stillwell, a maternal figure. He craves her approval, her affection, the things a child needs. And then he kills her. Season 2, Stan Edgar treats him like an unwanted stepchild. Then Stormfront arrives, someone who finally accepts him, encourages his darkness, validates his rage, his teenage rebellion. Ryan destroys that too. Season 3, he tries to raise Ryan as best as he knows how, while Soldier Boy, the father he's always wanted, rejects him and shames him for being a disappointment. Mother, father, lover, son. Every relationship ends in abandonment. That's why Homelander worked so powerfully. Underneath the superpowers and God complex was a child screaming for someone to love him. This layered trauma is what gave Homelander depth and made the show powerful. Kripke spent years building this emotional foundation. By Season 4, the pieces were perfectly aligned for a devastating conclusion. Homelander returns to the lab where he was created. He stops seeking approval and embraces raw power. The story had been laying groundwork for years. Vought lied about everything: origins, identities, histories. The corporation wasn't just profiting from soups. It had manufactured the monster and then spent decades covering its tracks. This wasn't heading toward a simple superhero showdown. It was heading toward a reckoning with the system itself. The setup was there for something profound. Stormfront was Liberty. She had a history with Soldier Boy. Homelander was created from his genetics. The true identity of his mother would have shattered Homelander completely. Every relationship, every piece of his identity exposed as corporate conspiracy. Vought's lies and deception would finally catch up with them, destroyed by the very monster they had created. This could have driven him to turn against Vought in a meaningful, thematic way. Instead of another fight sequence, we were primed for a powerful climax that exposed the true villain, the machine that built him. What we received instead was mechanical and unsatisfying. Plot points checked off without earning them. Homelander frees Soldier Boy only to imprison him again. Stan Edgar regains influence. The legend is spared. Butcher kills Homelander, Huey ends Butcher, and the fans feel hollow. Kripke even forced in multiple cameos for his friends and industry connections, giving them an easy payday while the main story suffered. The major emotional threads, Homelander's trauma, Vought's full corruption, the family lies, were left largely unresolved. Viewers didn't feel disappointed because the story ended. They felt disappointed because the story stopped short of the destination it had spent 5 seasons building toward. Here's the hard truth. The Boys didn't conclude its story, it postponed it. The unresolved Soldier Boy threads, Vought's hidden history, and the Stormfront connections weren't forgotten. They were deliberately preserved as valuable IP for future content. Kripke, who built his reputation on calling out corporate greed and hypocrisy, appears to have made the very compromise he spent years criticizing. The show that mocked corporations for treating people as products ultimately treated its own narrative the same way. Let's talk about what Vought Rising is almost certainly going to look like. The story will probably pick up with Stan Edgar releasing Soldier Boy from his pod, repositioning him as the new face of Vought's rebrand, all nostalgia, tradition, and a return to the good old days. From there, we dive into Soldier Boy's origin, his rise as the all-American war hero, the slow corruption of becoming the ultimate propaganda mascot for a corporate machine, and his complicated love story with Liberty before she fully became Stormfront. We'll watch him grapple with deep imposter syndrome, only to discover that Stormfront is still alive and likely carrying the unborn child conceived with Homelander. Eventually, Soldier Boy will turn on Vought, attempt to tear it down, destroy Stan Edgar, and bring the larger saga full circle. Of course, none of this will be wrapped up quickly. They'll stretch this material across multiple seasons, dragging out the origin story, the romance, the imposter syndrome, and slow down the rebellion with filler episodes, subplots, and endless corporate cover-ups and blackmail to keep the franchise alive as long as possible. But here's the thing. We didn't need any of this in a spin-off. All of these threads, the origins, the love story, the corporate corruption, the family revelations, could and should have been paid off in the final season of The Boys. Instead, they were deliberately held back so Amazon could double dip on the same IP, and Kripke could keep cashing checks while delivering more of his self-righteous political commentary. That's not quality universe building. That's corporate greed disguised as creativity. At a certain point, the question stops being whether the story could have ended differently and becomes whether it was ever meant to. The Boys had everything for a complete tragedy. Homelander's search for family, the slow revelation of Vought's lies, the system that engineered his every failure. It was building toward one final idea, that the real monster was never just the man. It was the machine that made him, but instead of delivering that payoff, the narrative shifted from closing to expanding. Emotional resolutions were deferred. The story about a corporation turning people into products became a franchise doing exactly the same thing. Whether intentional or not, Eric Kripke's The Boys ended up reflecting the same logic it once criticized. Resolution is less profitable than continuation. A show that began as a brutal critique of corporate storytelling ended as a product of it. Look, Kripke didn't just fumble the finale of The Boys. He betrayed the bold storytelling that made the show great by manipulating the audience with lazy writing and a dishonest ending. We have a choice. Keep rewarding that kind of manipulation or vote with our time. Stop watching shows that treat fans like idiots. Demand better for yourselves. If the storytelling isn't there, walk away. Remember they work for you, not the other way around. Thanks for watching. If you're frustrated with how The Boys ended up undermining its own message, drop a like, leave a comment with your thoughts on the finale, and subscribe for more breakdowns of where modern storytelling goes wrong. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical.